Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring the Goblin Slayer TRPG. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this role-playing game based on the popular fantasy series, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time, we are going to talk about miscellaneous checks that you can apply or use in all sorts of situations, both inside and outside of combat. I'm going to give you examples of a few of the categories because one or more of the checks could be applied to the same situation, and one or more of the basic ability scores could also apply to the same instance or check. We start with resistance checks. Resistance checks are made when trying to rebuke external factors that would otherwise exert negative influences over you, such as the Psych Resistance check. This is Psych Reflex plus Adventurer level or Dragon Priest level, and bonus from Cool and Collected. This is a skill. When you hear me pronounce some sort of name that doesn't make too much sense, it's probably a skill. We will talk about skills in a future part of this review. With this check, you resist terror or mental agitation and keep calm, or attempt to recover from a negative mental effect such as terror, confusion, or agitation. If making this check to recover from terror, agitation, etc., you may use your Psych Endurance instead of your basic score when deriving the standard score. This is because recovering from these states requires protracted resistance to the situation that caused the terror, agitation, and such. When making these Psych Resistance checks, the target value depends on the source. If there is no specified target value for the situation, the Game Master should set one. If your Psych Resistance check succeeds, you maintain your calm or naturally recover from a negative state like terror, confusion, or agitation. Then we have the Muscle Strength checks. Muscle Strength checks are made when a character's physical might is tested. An example would be the Climb check. This is Strength Endurance plus Fighter or Monk level plus bonus from Encumbered Action, another skill. You climb up or down a wall, cliff, or hanging rope using muscle strength. The target score depends on the height you must climb up or down without resting, as well as what the wall or cliff is like. You use a table to determine some modifiers. Perhaps you are equipped with heavy armor, or maybe you are using a specialized climbing tool, or perhaps there is a strong wind blowing. All of these factors could negatively or positively affect your check. If your climb check succeeds, you are able to climb up or down the wall or cliff safely. If it fails, you fall to a place down half the height you were trying to climb up or down and take falling damage. Then we have manipulation checks. These are made when testing your manual dexterity or for any work that requires precision. Most manipulation checks use Technique Focus, Technique Endurance, or Technique Reflex. An example would be the First Aid check. This is Technique Focus plus Ranger or Priest or Dragon Priest level plus bonus from First Aid. In order to perform First Aid once, you must spend about 5 minutes and one set of First Aid supplies. First Aid checks are made when performing basic healing or lowering a character's wound count. First Aid cannot lower fatigue or the attrition track. This check doesn't have a target score. Instead, use your final score as the effectiveness score to determine how many wounds you heal. You use the First Aid check's final score as the effectiveness score to determine how many wounds you are able to heal. You consult the Determining Recovery Amounts for First Aid table for this. The determined result is called a recovery amount. When a recovery amount has been determined, you reduce the target character's wound count by that value. If the character receiving First Aid has the Healing Affinity skill, reduce their wound count by the extra amount specified by its effect. Once a character's wounds have been healed with First Aid, They cannot lower their wound count through first aid again for 3 in-game hours. And these are just a few examples of the many checks that you can carry out during your adventures. There could be some negative modifiers to them, perhaps you are acting while being prone, or with poor vision, or while moving really fast. Some skills, some tests may require precision, so this is going to negatively affect your test. So it's always better to carry out these tests or checks under optimal conditions. Now let's talk about fate points. Before the start of an adventure, the Game Master gives 3 to 8 fate points. Fate points represent the hard work the player characters have put in and the power of their will to resolve situations. The number of fate points to give at the beginning of an adventure depends on how difficult it will be to complete that adventure. For an easy one, give 3, for a medium one, 5, and for a difficult one, 7. Using fate points is referred to as praying to the gods or as prayer. The player characters all share one pool of fate points, and all player characters must agree upon their usage. Fate points can be used in 4 different ways: increasing a check's results, re-rolling the dice, fleeing, or gaining a hint for the adventure. This is similar to the idea roll in Call of Cthulhu, or Call of Cthulhu if you are a Lovecraftian purist. When using a fate point for any of the described situations, you roll 2 6-sided dice. If the result is equal to or greater than the current number of fate points, it succeeds, and you gain the effects of however you used it. However, if the 2d6 roll is less than the current number of fate points, it fails and produces no effect. When using a fate point, regardless of whether it succeeds or fails, add 1 to the current number of fate points. Prayer is not a check. Because of this, it is unaffected by anything that affects checks normally. If there are currently 12 or more fate points, you cannot use any more. Now, when comparing this mechanic to similar mechanics in other role-playing games, this may not make too much sense. But that's because in this role-playing game, obtaining fate points is bad. That is, imagine that your group starts with 3 fate points. If they only want to increase a check's results, then they would receive 1 fate point from the Game Master. So let's say that they started with 3 plus 1, 4. So now they need to roll their 2 6-sided dice to see if they roll 4 or above. But what if they want a hint? That costs 4 fate points. So the Game Master gives them 4 fate points. 3 plus 4, that would be 7. You would need to roll 7 or above. And if you have accumulated more fate points from other actions, then the roll could be more difficult, perhaps 8, 9, or 10. So that's the way how fate points work in this particular TRPG. Now, one interesting thing is that depending on the number of fate points you finish the adventure with, you actually obtain bonus experience points, potentially. If you complete the adventure with 12 or more, or 7 or less fate points, then you get no experience bonus. But if you end up with a number between 8 and 11, you obtain an experience reward. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we are going to talk about combat. Now, when it comes to skills, as you can see, they are very flexible, quite applicable to all sorts of situations. Some skill checks or tests are a bit more specific. In the case of, for example, swimming. You're not going to be swimming while on dry land. But in the case of the different resistance checks, they could apply to all sorts of situations. Now, when it comes to the use of fate points, I find them very interesting. Like I said, very different from other role-playing games, where you have a pool of fate points or bennies or the like, and you are spending points from that pool. But here, you are accumulating fate points as a group of adventurers, and that's actually bad. So you want to save them for situations where it is of the utmost importance to employ them. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.